Hey everybody, it's Jeff from Programmer vs. World again. And before you yell at me, yeah, I know it's been a really long time. And there's been a lot of stuff going on, man. But I can promise you now, I've actually changed jobs. I work from home a lot more. I work for a company that's built around Sling and AEM, so I'm not having to balance a whole bunch of other technologies together. And I'll be able to do this every now and then and be able to continue to post videos. It's been so long, as a matter of fact, that there's already a new version of Sling out, and I think I already got a few people that have already downloaded and started using it, and it's a lot different. As a matter of fact, it's going to not only make developing on it exceptionally easier, but it's also going to make doing tutorials in it a lot easier too. So what I thought I'd do today is I would do a quick video on how you can convert a project from our previous versions of Sling. I think we were using 8 to the new version of 9, and then we can get set up so that you could follow along with the rest of the tutorial. Now, the good news is we don't need an IDE anymore to do this, and we'll be able to finish the tutorial without one. However, if you want to keep using one, that's fine. There is some other things that have changed though. Especially this whole content XML thing has changed drastically in 9 for the better, I might add. But that's where we're going to sort of see a difference when we get going. What I've done, you can ignore my error messages here, is I've just put the new Launchpad 9 in a directory. Now, this is the same way we've always done it before. Now, if you go to the Sling downloads page, you'll know there's a brand new one called Sling 9. I don't want to see the API docs. I don't know why I clicked on that. You want to get the same standalone right here and download it to that directory. If you want to know what's new in Sling 9, and believe me, there's a lot of stuff, you have to come down here into news. And I don't know when you're going to watch this video, but right now you'll notice Apache Sling 9's release notes is rather close to the top. Right off the bat, we see we have to stop saying Jackrabbit during these presentations because we're now using Apache Oak. We're also using tar database and no longer using Derby. And the Explorer is replaced with Composum, and Composum is a pretty cool web app that allows us now to actually do development, and all of our modifications that we need from like a tutorial perspective we can do right on the website or on the web application. We don't need to have an IDE. You could go a little bit further down. The biggest thing, I think, if you work in this field is that login administrative is going to be deprecated, and when Adobe AEM finally adopts Sling 9, which may be a few years, this is going to solve a lot of problems, but for a completely different thing. And we also have streaming uploads now. There also is some new plugins to support Sightly, or HTL as we called it, but you know, I'm not going to harp on this. I would definitely come here and read this, especially if you've been building in Sling a while. This is really cool. I did not expect this release to come out. I expected to continue to use Sling 8 forever. It's really cool that this came out, and I'll show you why here in a second. Anyway, so I have that running, and I'm just going to start it same way we always did. And I'm going to use Chrome to make sure it's running. It may take it a minute or two. Yeah, and don't do HTTPS like I just did. That was crazy. All right, so you can see that the home page has changed a little bit. Okay, we definitely want to log in. It's still admin. They didn't do anything crazy there. But now when we go on the right hand side and we say browse content, this will look completely different than the stuff I've been showing you. And this is actually really cool for 2 reasons. One is now there's actually a code editor built in over here. So like if we go to our index HTML, not only can we preview what it looks like without having to leave this window, we can also come right here and see the source. And then we can hit this button right here and actually launch an editor to change it, which this makes things a lot quicker. We can literally hit save right here and then come back here and take a quick glance and see how everything's going. And when it comes to building node content, okay, this thing's going to pull up a create new node modal dialog, which will look a lot like what CQ will do later. The only difference is they're going to make you enter your primary type and some other stuff, but we can get through that. It'll make things more understandable. But you notice this is completely blank. There's nothing in it. This slingshot is a sample application. This libs directory has a bunch of sample stuff in it too. And we haven't really built our application to be more like Slingshot is included to show you how the proper way to build a standalone web app inside Sling works. And the only real difference is they put all their stuff in libs. This is where they put their components. We didn't. We put ours in apps. And the reason I did that is because that's sort of where CQs are. Adobe AEM and CQ put theirs in there. If you want to be more Sling centric, you'll keep it in libs, but I'm already like excited and gone way off tangent with what I'm supposed to be showing you. So I'm going to pull up a clips in our previous project, and I'm going to push the content in here and show you how to do it. It's not really complicated, but you need to do it at least once and validate that it's working. Yeah, that's what I called that. And we'll do it using the plugin. And for those of you that want to keep the source code and they want to keep it for they want to keep it in Eclipse so they can maintain it, there is a way that you can reverse the stuff back out too, and I'll show you how to do that. And then we'll just end the video, and then we'll go on to finishing the application itself. Must have been a while since I opened it if that happened. So here's our previous project. I'm going to make sure real fast. I think we had already got to data sightly list. Good. That's where I stopped. Sometimes I get ahead of myself and I end up pulling stuff out of source control that you guys haven't seen yet. And it should just be a simple page, and it goes through all the podcasts that are in this direct. Okay, so this looks like exactly where we were before. So what we want to do is we want to come down here to the Apache Sling Docker section, which will probably say stopped. And I want to click on this button to start the server. It'll say that it's synchronized, but I seriously doubt that it pushed anything. As you can see, the content directory did not move. So that synchronization did nothing on this brand new project. So what we want to do is we want to come to the top of our project right here, whatever you guys called it. Right click. And my computer is going to be responding slow because I've got so many things up right now. Sling. And we want to say export to server. Right. So it's calling this a repository, but this name, it just means what server that you want to push it to. And then you say finish. It may go relatively fast. You may not even see the change here like I just didn't. But if I refresh, you'll notice that the content directory has our podcasts in it, just like we said. Now, I've already had someone on the comments of one of the videos say that they're already seeing that when they push things into Sling now, they're getting this type ordered folder back by default. I think this is something new here with Sling 9 and their default folder types. But I learned the other day, it's also ignoring this content XML because this is not the way we do things anymore. There's actually well, we could still use XML type, but hiding it with the .content in front of it was sort of a previous Sling thing, and it's not something that it even works anymore. But we'll fix this. But picking ordered folder is a pretty cool default actually, because the only difference between a Sling folder and an ordered folder is all of the subnodes underneath the ordered folder. Whoops, we weren't supposed to show you that yet. All the this is actually still a folder, but all the things underneath an ordered folder will just be in alphabetical order. I mean, by default, everything's in the order that you put it in there, which means if I put 2 in first and then put 1 in, every time I looked at the app, it would be backwards. All right. So let's take a look at this new editor. This stuff is in here, and I can tell you it's working because I just accidentally clicked on it and got ahead of myself. But I remember this is primarily where we did some of the work, and right here we can see the resource type of components podcasts, which meant in our apps directory, we obviously had an html.html down here. You'll notice underneath it now there's a JCR content node, and this is kind of cool because this is something you're going to see inside the tree viewer and CRXDE Lite and AEM a lot. But if we come over here and we actually click this button, we can actually see the code that we wrote. You know what? Let's close Eclipse because I don't even need it anymore. Right, and I definitely don't need Spotify to be up here taking all my resources away. Sorry. Make this a little bit bigger, even though it's not going to stop that wrap line, which is kind of in the way. But now we can actually see the code that we're working on. Now we can't actually come in here and type anything, but if we click the edit button, we actually can, right? So we can come in here. And we're not going to change anything right now, but you'll notice you have save, save and close. You have the ability to search, find. Someone's going to ask right off the bat, is there good at telesense? The answer is not really, but the tags are aware of each other to some degree. Like when I click on the end of P, I can see where it began over here. So there is some editing functions inside of it, along with the ability to collapse. So there's enough functionality in here right now, right out of the gate, that we can edit in it and be relatively comfortable. The truth is, inside Eclipse, we really didn't get a whole lot when it came to HTML anyway, even though they fixed that now and there is a new plugin. But we know this rendered this podcast node, and the cool thing is I don't have to come over here, open a new tag and open it to find that out. I can click right here on the eyeball button and I can actually see the page that we did. I can also refresh it from here, and if I want to see it up there, I can hit that button, this button right here, and it'll actually launch in a new window. And I can't tell you how happy that makes me. That one little thing improved my life 1,000% rather than having to remember the content path across here. You'll notice that the shortcut content directories usually has a mapping file that removes the word content from it later. It's like something you do in a production web app so that people don't see this, because this is like a dead giveaway at Sling or CQ. You can create a mapping file that just ignores that, and it's sort of implied. It just applies it to the front. So that's all that happened there. You can also enter your different types of selectors. You can do your extensions here as well. So like if you want to do JSON, you can just enter JSON in that block and see it. Or let's say we want to do XML. We're not going to see that, are we? Because it's rendering it away. But by default, it's HTML. If you have selectors and you want to put them in, so this is a little test platform by itself. This is an easy way to go ahead and get the JSON, though. You don't need to type it in there. This is showing permissions, which is incredibly cool. This used to be the hardest part of building a Sling app, was permissions. And this is actually showing you if you had versionable nodes in Oak. I don't know that we'll really get to that because that gets complicated really fast. But the coolest part is we can actually see our node structure right here. If we need to add new things to it, we can just simply use this little editor. The cool part about that little editor is it almost mimics exactly what it's like in Adobe CQ to add properties to nodes. And do we really have anything else? So yeah, we did each individual podcast. We just hadn't created a application for it yet. Cool. I'm trying to just remember how far we did. It's been so long. So we actually put a header in our application, and we did this, and we actually rendered the podcasts. So my guess is now we need to get to the point where each podcast has its own episodes, and then we render those as well. Okay, cool. So I think what we will do, let me take a look at the header real fast. So we were using Bootstrap and jQuery. Cool. So we did all that. I'm just trying to remember where we were. All right. So what we'll do is for the rest of the tutorials, we'll develop off this. It'll be a little bit easier to understand. I like how the content node is a different color. In a weird way, I kind of wish apps and libs were too. It would help cut down on the confusion. But I think this is completely something we can work with. Now, the second part where it gets crazy is they now have support for packages. Packages in a nutshell is a way for you to create a set of filters that basically grab content out of the content nodes and zip it up for you and make it available so that you can not only download it, but you can deploy it somewhere else. Packages are just like they say. If I build an app and I package it right, I can deploy it somewhere else, or I could give it to you and you could just run the app. So I could just install Sling, hand someone a package and hit the upload button and upload it to it and say install, and boom, I've got a web app installed in here. We're going to use this. Users is brand new to me. I'm going to have to do some reading. And this is basically so that this whole concept of there being just a normal user and administrative user is now gone. This is supposed to make it easier for you to make users in the system and then give them permissions to specific things. So like after you've created a user in here, you can go back in your browser and we can say something like that specific user has full access rights to read. Right here are the principles. In our case, everyone's allowed to read it, which is cool. But we may create nodes that you can post to later. In that case, we may end up having to create privileges for it. And our previous console is sitting right here at the last tab, and we don't need to open up anything special to see it. I didn't notice right off the bat if they've added any cool new plugins to it. For the most part, it looked like the same thing we're used to seeing, with the exception of I never noticed this was in here before. Apparently it was probably in there from Sling 8, which gave a list of all the adapters that are available in the system. It's just some small things that have been added, and this is mainly because these plugins have been updated since a while back, since Sling 8 was actually bundled. But we're not going to dive too far in that. Anyway, now we've moved basically the podcast app over here, and we're going to do a lot of work on it. We're probably going to make some packages so that you can hold on. If you just remember to keep rebuilding and re-download every night, you can hold on to it. But for those of you that are just dead set in making sure this all gets put back in the IDE somehow, I will show you how you use the plugin, and which is basically the same way. We just take it and we right-click it and we say import from server, and it'll pull everything out of the server and override our tree. And maybe we should do that towards the end of the project and then talk about what happened with the content XML. I can probably show you that though. Let me do that before I end the video. So the content XML basically before used to get stuck in here. It was invisible, you couldn't see it, but it would allow you to preset all of these properties on the nodes when they were inserted, and that's all controlled by the Sling plugin. And actually it's Vault that had a lot to do with it. It's basically a caveat that happened with the way vaults data to and from Sling instances. That has changed. And let me make sure I'm on actually one of my own projects and not a work project. Okay. So now what happens is, let me show you my content directory. This is actually done the slingshot way. And all that really means is that libs is being used. I have something at the top level and not in the content path, but there is actual content there. Site is actually where all the resources go. So at the top level I have the Framework 7 mobile stuff. I have Materialize and a whole bunch of other stuff in there. That's actually in a different folder, and I didn't put it in apps. Libs is now my apps folder, and you can see that there's all these Sitely templates on the inside of it. There's even a few rogue content XMLs, but these are completely useless. I just haven't removed them from source control yet. So now you'll notice for every folder, there's also a JSON file associated with it, and that JSON file has these extra attributes, like what type of folder it should be and the resource type. Then if I come in one level and say categories has its own JSON file, right? This is basically what the content loader looks like now. And if you come inside of a specific, let's go to sign, like if you come inside a specific directory, and you have unstructured nodes in there, they look like this. Okay, so the whole content XML thing is gone. What ends up happening is now in every directory, by default, it's an ordered folder unless there is also a JSON file inside the folder named the same exact thing that specifies otherwise. And it seems complicated, but it's a lot simpler than the content XML is, to be honest with you, because this is a simpler rule to keep track of, which is if when you're using that plugin now, when you're vaulting things in, if it's a folder, it's automatically an ordered folder unless you have a JSON file name the same exact thing at the same level that says it's something else, right? And that's essentially how it works. And when it comes to unstructured nodes, you don't even need folders anymore. You can just drop those little JSON files inside there. For instance, it's going to create a node with a name of black, but it's actually going to create an unstructured node with this description, title, code, whatever. And that's pretty much how it works now. So for everyone that's getting caught up in the content XML, creating ordered folders, the truth is what it's really doing is just flat out ignoring the content XML. And when we reverse the project back from Sling, I don't know that it's actually going to fix that either. I don't know if the Sling plugin has caught up with Sling 9 yet, but I guess we'll find out at the end of it. But that's really what's going on. So, yeah, there's nothing really special about, a production application other than the fact that it's just organized a little bit different. So for the most part, what we did today was we're trying to make the migration to Sling 9. And for those of you right now that are following along the tutorials and this is what your browser looks like, don't do anything. You're okay. All right. You've already grabbed Sling 9, and that's sort of why it doesn't look the same. But if yours still looks like mine in that previous video, that was Sling 8. If it still looks like that and you follow these steps to move your app into Sling 9, you're now caught up, and we'll go ahead and continue building the rest of the podcast app. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and start stubbing that out now so that we can do the next section. And I'm going to have to listen to the video to even remember what I said we're going to do next. But I'm pretty sure what we're going to do is we were going to add episodes to the podcast and then continue to put those in. And then we were going to have to create a servlet, I think, in order to create the XML content for the actual RSS feed. I have to think of how I want to do that. Anyway, I'm Jeff from Programmers vs. World, and once you guys get this step completed, we'll go on to the next thing. And everybody have a good one. I'm going to get another cup of coffee and see what else I can start putting together today. But you guys have a good one, and have a happy Thursday, and I'll see you on the next video.